Hello everyone. Today I thought I would go over built-in functions in SQL. Built-in functions are pretty simple once you get the hang of them, but when you're just learning about them, they can seem pretty intimidating. So I thought today I would go over a couple of examples and kind of explain what they are and how we can use them. So for built-in functions, there are three main types. All of this is gone over, I believe, in chapter 6 of the textbook, so you can read more about them there. And again, these are just a couple of examples, not anywhere near all of the available functions. But the three main types are date functions, which are used to grab the day or the month or the year. As you can see, I have a typo on the day one that should say day sale date equals 01, not 2020. The month and the year, you can use it to pull out the number of the month and the number of the year. Several different operations, including string functions. So if you're selecting a string, you can set it to be all lowercase, or you can get the length of it if you wanted to know how long somebody's name was, for example, and various arithmetic functions to work on number values, such as the absolute value or rounding the number to a certain decimal place. That one probably comes in the most handy, the rounding one. And then for aggregate functions, which work instead of on a single row like the other two, they work on a whole column. And these are usually used for, well, functions that aggregate data. So something like the average or the sum total of all of the prices might be something like that. These aggregate functions are often used with group by. There are some cases where they're not used with group by, but when you see an aggregate function, just be prepared that you might have to use that statement. So this is the fake data that we'll be looking at. I ordered it by dates just for ease of use. It's modeled after the simplified sales database, and it's really just for example purposes. So let's go into an example of how to use the date operators. So in the database, the format for dates is written as it is on the screen with the year, month, day, and often with hours, minutes, and seconds as well. It might include an AM or PM, depending on if you're using 12 or 24-hour time. So for example, what if I wanted to say, give me a list of everyone who bought something, anything in September? Now I took the liberty of highlighting the two rows of the people who bought something in September here. So those are the two rows that we are going to be looking for, or rather just the names that we're going to be looking for. So how might we do that? Well, it's pretty simple. Oh, and as a bonus, I'm showing you how to combine column names and columns into one full column. So for example, in the select statement, you can see I'm doing first name plus a space plus last name as full name. That'll just concatenate the two columns together and give it a new header as full name. So we can walk through the SQL statement here. After the select statement, where we select the name from the fake data, all we have to do is where the month of the date is equal to 9. 9 is, of course, September, the 9th month. And that gives us the data exactly as we want it, the two names of the two people who bought something in September. You can use this for year, you can use it for month, you can use it for day, you can use it for hours, minutes, and seconds, and you can even combine them. So if I wanted to say, well, only people who bought something in September of 2015, I could say where month date equals 9 and where year date equals 2015. Or you might be able to use something like between if I wanted to say where month date is between a set number of months or days or whatever else you might want to use it. So as you can see, this is pretty versatile and it'll probably come up quite a bit. Moving on to the operations, these are something that these are probably one of the second most complicated. I might say the aggregate functions are the most complicated, but these ones are only complicated because of the sheer number and scale of them. There are so many different operations, and sometimes it's hard to pick the right one, and a lot of times there are multiple ways to do the right one. So let's say we wanted to get the full names of all of our customers whose first name starts with S. I've gone ahead and took the liberty of highlighting the proper rows here again. So how might we go about writing a SQL statement to get these? Well, there's a couple of ways. But just for an example, I figured I would use the char index operation function. Remember, there are a lot of different operations, and I highly recommend you read through the textbook to really get an idea and practice using a couple of them on your own. So looking at the SQL statement again, we can say we select the first and last name as full name again from fake data, and here we use the char index function. So what char index does is it takes two arguments, and it'll return a character and then a string, and it'll return the index where that character first shows up. So if we're going through, let's say, and we're looking at the row number, the one right on top, it'll go through and the char index will take in the first name as a parameter. So on the first row that I'm looking up at top, it's Steve. And then it'll take that string and check for an S, which I gave it as well. And it sees that S is the first letter, so it will return 1. Remember, this is case sensitive as well. So if it started with a lowercase s, it would not match it. In that case, it might be helpful to also use an upper or lower function that you can read about more in the textbook as well. And of course, you can chain these, you can nest them. So you could do char index of s on 2 lower first name or 2 upper first name as well. So that's the string operations. You could also do this with something called string matching, which I might make a video on in the future. But if this seems a little bit complicated to you, go ahead and read up on string matching, which is another topic, but another very helpful and interesting one. The last one is an aggregate function. Aggregate function, I think, are the most complicated simply because they are used with group by, and for a lot of people, that concept is difficult to understand. So aggregate functions, again, are used for things like averages. So I will be going through and trying to find the average price of each product in the database. Now this means I want the average price of shoes, I want the average price of shirts, I want the average price of pants, and so on. And so how can I do that? How can I write a SQL statement? Well, first you kind of have to understand how the group by and halving work. But I'm going to cover that in another video. So go ahead and watch the group by video if you're still having difficulty with this topic. So the way you would do it is you would write a SQL statement that looks a lot like this. You would select the product name and the average price because I want to know the average price for each product. And then you have to group by the products. That's how it knows how to group them and which averages to find. Again, I'll go over this in more detail in the group by video, so go ahead and watch along there if you'd like. However, if you don't select anything else, so let's say I wanted the whole average of all of the prices and instead of just the product for each individual product, you can go ahead and do an aggregate function on an entire table without selecting any other data. And in that case, you don't need a group by because it will automatically see the entire table as a single group. So as you can see in this example, we get the averages for each individual product. Shoes are an average of $16.67 and so on. And then in this one, we see the average price for everything all combined is $12.67. So thank you for watching. I hope this gave you a good overview, a good insight on how these functions work. I highly recommend you go through the textbook, read through them, do the practice ones they have in there, and practice some on your own as well so you can really get a good understanding. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.